have said to this community, when you need help, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter on what street you live, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what our history is, if you need help, I'm there for you. And that's what working with Burlington Rescue is. When you're not handling things, let me know.
When I first applied for the squad, it was in 1973, and I went to Jack Berry because I did my banking at the Bank of Burlington, and he was a squad member, and I saw he was enthused about being able to help the community in this volunteer situation. He told me there's a waiting list, Simon. We only have 20 members on the squad. So I finally got on in 1979. We didn't even have a heart monitor. And I think in 1981 was the first monitor. It was a young EMT. All we really could do was, if a person had fallen, maybe backboard them because we were worried about a spine injury. Sure. We could splint injuries. We extricated people out of cars that were in accidents. And the other thing was, you might say you had chest pain in those days, we would give you oxygen, load you on a cot, and load and go to the hospital. There wasn't anything else we could really do with our license at that time. Today we are, like I said, doing 12 leads. We, as an advanced EMT, we give about, I think it's 9 different drugs that we give. We start IVs, we treat for blood sugar problems, diabetics, which we couldn't in those days. Like I mentioned, a lot of times it was just the load and go and sirens. Today we hardly use our siren at all going to the hospital, unless you're really, really in bad shape. Then we use a siren going to the hospital. But we use a siren going to a call because we don't know what the situation is going to be. But then going to the hospital, very seldom, because we're worried about causing accidents, people pulling into different lanes, and it's just not safe. And a lot of our calls are general calls.
Swabbing the decks.
2 calls that I kind of dread going on. One is a motorcycle accident because there's no protection of that person, and the other one would be a child. And I can remember going on a call one evening about 6:30 at night. A parent's close to 30 years old, first child. They were having their evening meal. Their child was in a high chair.
Okay.
And the parents had some pretzels on the table. They were talking about things that happened that day. All of a sudden, they noticed their child was not breathing. And the call came in as a child unresponsive, choking. We went to the scene, and Mayor Jeannie Hefty was on the squad at the time and close by, and I remember pulling up, and she came running out with that 6-month-old child and said, the child's choking on pretzels. Well, you know, a pretzel, as soon as you put it in your mouth, it swells up and it blocked the airway. And taking that child then, we tried everything we could on the way to the hospital. And when we got to the emergency room, the doctor tried everything he could to dislodge the pretzel or pretzels. Right. And 20 minutes later, called the parents in and told them that their child was gone. So a call like that bothers me. This year is kind of a big year for me because in March I'll have served 40 years, and my wife recently asked me, how long are you going to do this? And I said, well, I still enjoy doing it. And she said, you realize that in July you'll be 80 years old. And I said, well, there's not a waiting list anymore. So if I can help people, I'm going to help them as long as I can and help the community.
Following in my dad's footsteps, I used to ride with him on calls just to see what was going on, and I was instrumental in getting the first EMT class established in Burlington prior to even the EMT class being established in Racine. I think the first class that we had was like 75 hours, and it was instructed by a lot of the doctors at the hospital. They had to sign on to the program to do the instructions. Leonard Thomas from the state of Wisconsin brought all the equipment down and coordinated it with the doctors and myself here at Burlington to get it rocking and rolling. But it definitely changed some things that we did back then from, like you say, load and go, as opposed to giving some care at the scene. And not everyone on the squad at the time took the class, so you weren't required to take it. If you just didn't have the time to contribute, you would try and get somebody who had that next level of care to be on that truck or to be on that call when it was necessary to have them. Back then, the big piece of extrication equipment that we used was a carborundum saw. And of course with that, you had to have fire suppression things there. We didn't have the hydraulics and stuff that they have that evolved later on down the road. We had plain backboards. We didn't have the more sophisticated backboards that they had now. And back then, Art McCourt lived around the corner from Mertens here, and Jim May lived on that end of town. My dad lived out on 36. Glenn Hintz lived out on West Chestnut. And it was like a conglomeration of high-speed vehicles meeting at Fred's Corner downtown, and never had an accident, but came real close a number of times. It was thrilling riding with my dad. My dad, like I say, had one arm, and at that time, the second truck was stick shift, but he could stick shift and drive as well as anybody with two hands. He would hold on and balance the steering wheel with the hook and shift with the right hand. And he could run the gears no problem. The thing that was an advantage with him is back then, if you needed to get a windshield out, he could slam his hook through that and pull it out without getting cut. The only thing he'd have to watch out for is high tension or electric wires, because that was a definite conductor with the metal. He lost it in a corn shredder accident. When I first came out of high school and went to work for McCarthy Ritter Funeral Home, Elmer Rubach, who was a member of the Burlington Rescue Squad, his nickname was Amy Rubach. He told me the first day walking in the door, he said, if you were born to hang, you're not going to drown. And so I came with that mentality that if I showed up on the scene to help you and I did everything in my power and it was beyond my power, so be it. You walk away from it, you pick up, tomorrow's going to come whether you wanted to be there or not, If I were to do something wrong and somebody didn't survive because of it, I'd feel very badly. But I always tried to put myself in a position to do everything I was trained to do as best I could, One of the calls I had that was kind of unique was Dr. Dussault's son rolled a car over out on Double D, and it was a Camaro, was upside down. I was a lot thinner at the time, and I was able to slide in the back window and support the girl that was hanging by her calf muscle by a telephone pole. It's pierced through her leg, and I supported her butt while at that time Doc Majeski showed up and cut the muscle, dropped her down, and we took her out of the car. We weren't sure how we were going to get that telephone pole splinter out of her leg or off it to get her out without sawing it. But he just cut it and said, I can sew that back up at the hospital. But he lived nearby and just showed up. But I slid in, at that time, no fire gear, no boots. Had my pajama bottoms on, a pair of boots, and a jacket. Slid in the car and picked her up. And then she showed up later at one of our meetings with a cake and thanked us. I enjoyed helping the people. I mean, I've been there when people died talking to me. And I've been there when they were born, different ones. One of the most gratifying things, and you can ask all those guys, is if you were ever involved in delivering a baby. If you wanted to bring smiles to 7 members' faces, have them there, that's like having 7 new fathers on the scene.
I was interviewing for teaching positions, and I interviewed in 5 locations and was offered some of those positions. And I chose Burlington because Burlington had a volunteer ambulance service. That was the primary reason I chose Burlington. And when I got here, became an active member of Burlington Rescue of my first year in this community. One of the best ways to describe my involvement is I believe you can buy a house in any community in this world, but to make it a home, you have to be involved in that community. When I was 4 years old, my parents and some of their friends bought a hearse from the local funeral home that was closing and started an ambulance service. And so my parents were EMTs, my grandparents were EMTs, my siblings were EMTs. I didn't know anything different. It was kind of an unstated expectation that in my family you became an EMT. And I did, and have loved almost every minute of it. So when I walk into a call, whether it's with your family member, or whether it's with my neighbor, or whether it's with one of my students, sometimes it's comforting for them to see a familiar face. And then further comforting is when we start to interact with them and develop an instantaneous relationship to say, I'm gonna find out through the next couple of minutes what you need and then give that to you. I was needed in a number of different capacities on that day. I was needed as an EMS member. Shortly thereafter, I recognized that from a community standpoint, my community needed me. And then I broke it down further and said, there are people in the community that can handle the community, but I have to go where I know I'm specifically needed, and that was within the school system. So not only was I an EMS person on that day, I was a friend on that day, I was a teacher on that day, and I was a person that was hurting. I hope that the community understands that those of us who were involved in that tragedy recognize that, you know, while people suffered great loss, we again consider that a gift to have been able to say, we got you. I have a couple of significant passions in my life. Number one is EMS, and number two is education and working with the youth of our community. And so I always treated them as separate entities. And when I was head of this organization, I kept thinking, how do we expand our ranks? How do we do this? And then when I was able to step back from being chief, I kind of had an epiphany, and I said, why am I treating these two things separately? My students that I teach are wanting to go into medicine. They need experience, they need hours. Burlington Rescue has nothing to give but hours, so why do I not marry the two of those things together? So what I did is I went to Jeff, who was our chief at the time, I went to Gateway, and I went to my administration, and I said, I need you to hear me out on something, and the only thing that you are not allowed to say is no. And so I presented my proposal, and everyone accepted it. And we in Burlington, here's one of the things that we can really be proud of. We have the second program in the nation where we have high school students who are on call during their school day to help our community. And we are going into, I believe it's our 8th year of that. We've put out it's probably close to 200 EMTs now. When you talk about a brotherhood or a kinship that you have with people that you're really close with, you're right. That can be with a sports team. That can be with your colleagues at work. That can be within a really tight neighborhood. Those are some wonderful examples of belonging to a group. We take it to the next level when you're in EMS. I specifically remember a day when, there's been numerous times, but I'm going to talk about one day when I literally put my life in the hands of my partner. On this particular occasion, there was a former student of mine who became an EMT, and we had, yet another tragedy in this town where one of our young people had truly what is an accident. It's nobody's fault, sledding and went into the river. Our community stepped up instantaneously, and this young man who was my student and I were two of the first that were on scene. So I quickly got into a water suit, and when you go in a water suit, you hand it's called a lifeline. You hand it off to someone else. It's called a lifeline for a reason, because that's what it is. Right. And we were in the river within a couple of minutes of this call, trying to save a young man whose life, unfortunately, we were not able to do. But you have to be willing to trust your partners enough to hand your life off, and then recognize the responsibility when they do the same for you. They will hand you the reins and say, we got this together. There's a number of characteristics that it takes to be a good EMS worker, and I'm going to quote the Rotary motto right now: service above self. When you recognize that there is something far greater in life than you as an individual. What's that statement that says the cumulative total is far greater than the sum of the individual parts? That's it. We in Burlington Rescue are a living example of what this community, this state, this nation, and this world should be. Living by example, to be positive members of a community, and we demonstrate that on a daily basis every single time a pager goes off.
Talk about that progression, where you're at now, how many calls you're answering.
Last year we were about 1,540.
Okay.
This year I think we're going to be just under the 1,600 mark, right around that 750 mark. History has told us, through certain studies that has to be the breaking point when most volunteer organizations tend to go either paid on premise, paid on call, or full time. It's hard getting the volunteers to donate the time to do this. I mean, typical call, anywhere from an hour to hour and a half. You've got 9, 10, 11 people answering a majority of the calls, and the rest of the squad kind of filling in from there. But those, 9, 10, 11 people, they want to have a life too. There's a lot of calls that seem to happen from that, 4:30 to usually around 7:30, 8 o'clock. A lot of people are eating dinner then. That's the same as our squad members, and guess what? You're in the middle taking a bite of meat or something, and ding, 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 and out the door you go. You're going down to Dairy Queen with the family. Tones go off. You're bolting. You're leaving the family there. Birthday parties, same thing. We got training once a month.
Okay.
There's 4 mandatory hospital trainings. We do a truck check twice a month.
Okay.
So if you look at our typical training, 2 to 3 hours when we do it. Truck checks, depending on the number of people, hour to 2 hours. So start adding that up, plus your calls. I mean, you're putting in time. Our typical refresher every 2 years, you have to have 60, let me go back. It's 60 hours for AEMT, but there's 12 less hours for just EMT basics. So I guess you start really looking at those hours, they're adding up. I think Troy had numbers a couple years ago. The average volunteer, on the squad at the time was putting in close to, I wanted to say it was 700 hours. You look at, I think, at a lot of the people that are doing this, especially the volunteers, they're doing it because they want to help somebody. And why do they want to help somebody? Because they care. And ultimately, I think that's probably the biggest part of it, because you care for your fellow human being. These people give so much. We don't ask for recognition. We don't ask for the thank yous. But when you get them, they mean the world to you. They really do.
You got a videotape right here. What do you say to those 26 people who serve this community?
Thank you. Between the EMS and the fire, it's something in my heart. You guys have done one hell of a job. Proud of you. I'm proud of just being associated with you, and proud to be in this situation to be able to, even accept this, as a group.